Hello, everyone, and welcome to another GateDrop.com podcast. I'm Jonathan McCready, and joining me today is Andrew Short. A lot of you will know Andrew because of his motocross and supercross career in America, a very successful career over 15, 16 years. But we saw Andrew at the weekend at Lommel, and I want to ask you, Andrew, first of all, what was your experience of that in the sand, what Jeffrey Hurlings was doing, about Ked de Wolf winning at 16 years old as well? Give us your view on your Lommel experience.
Yeah, it's a race that's unique, and I think to appreciate it, you have to see it in real life, and TV never does anything justice. So to have the opportunity to go there, check it out. I've never been to an MXGP. I've been to the nations when it was in the United States when I participated, but for sure it's much different when you're there in real life and to see it in Europe and on a track that's so historic and challenging. It was really cool. And to see the paddock, see the people, and I have some friends obviously that I've met throughout the years, and it was really cool. And obviously the level of riding was really high, and the conditions were crazy and tough and challenging. So it was cool. Good experience.
And on the riders, was anybody stand out? Obviously, Hurlings had the shoulder injury, but we had a Frenchman win in the sand as well, Romain Fevre. What were your thoughts on the whole scenario with that going on?
Yeah, honestly, for me, I follow GPs, the MXGP from afar, and uh, I really follow American motocross, and I know people, and I stay in touch with that. So, um, for me, the most exciting part was seeing the young kids in the 250 class, and I feel like that's the future. And it didn't seem like there was a whole lot of depth compared to the US series in the 250 class, where the 450 class is crazy. The depth is all the way through, and so this is one big thing I noticed. But I love seeing the young kids, and I don't know how you say it, DeWolf or just Wolf, but that kid's amazing, man. He was just surfing the sand and his style, and he just looked happy and looked like he enjoyed the race, and he was just stoked. And when you see a kid with a vibe like this, it makes you want to ride a dirt bike. So it was cool
Mm.
just to see this and see him after the race, how happy he was and smiling, and the people around him. And this was cool.
You raced James Stewart, obviously, when he was a young teenage phenomenon doing similar things. What is the mentality of a competitor like yourself when you see a young kid coming and winning straight away? Are you happy for him? Or are you even like, I should be winning?
Nah, yeah, I think it's cool, and it's good for the sport when you have a lot of diversity, and it's cool for Yamaha too. I feel like they have strength in numbers. They have a lot of young kids coming up, and they've invested in this, and it's cool to see those guys. And it's weird for me because yesterday I was watching Loretta Lynn's
Yeah.
on my computer when I got home, and you see uh, Deegan. He's like the big hype here in the U.S., and he's 15 on a super mini. And you
Yeah.
think of, yeah, Hurlings or Kenny Roxon when he was coming up. They were 15 winning GPs, and they were riding these tracks that are so gnarly. I was showing my kid Lommel, and I'm like, this is the gnarliest track I've ever seen. And he's like, oh, it doesn't look that crazy. I'm like, are you kidding me? And so it's cool just to see the difference and how crazy it is. But these kids that are so young in Europe that are dedicated to motocross, I think it's a whole different world compared to here in the US, where you see 15-year-olds still on a super mini at Loretta Lynn's competing. So it is two different worlds. But I would really like to see Hurlings without the injury. It was so impressive, and what he did, how fast he is, and just his determination. I can't imagine without the injury. He seems so internally driven, motivated, and just his self-belief and confidence is on another level. And on a sand track is really cool to see the things that he can do and the places he can put the bike and the way he keeps his momentum going forward.
And just on Tony Caroli, that was the guy you raced at the Nations 10. I think it's 10 years ago now. He still now challenges for his 10th world title as a fellow professional to be doing that at, I think he's coming 36 in the next couple of months. You must have a lot of respect for a rider that can keep going that long at the top.
Yeah, to me, he's his character for who he is on and off the track, how he conducts himself, his accomplishments speak for themselves. He's a true professional. But yeah, I admire a person like this. Obviously, he's fast on the bike, and I don't know. I just feel like from the fan perspective, he's a guy I would cheer for and somebody that I like and I appreciate. You know, I think there's rare people that come through that want to be or that can compete year after year like this. And like you said, at 36, this is something that's really respectful and it's just cool to see. And it's awesome that he's still there. I think this is something that the fans and the sport should be more appreciative of. And I don't know, it was cool to see him there racing.
Talking of long careers, you did have a very long career yourself, which I think is testament to your professionalism, especially in America with the supercross and the outdoors. It's a long year, so it would go on, I think it was 15, 16-year career you had. But what interests me, just to start at the beginning, when you were growing up, and obviously you were fast and you were showing potential, but how realistic was a pro career for you? You sort of coming into your teenage years, was it something you were really striving for, or it sort of just became closer as you got older?
I've always had a passion for riding and racing, and I wasn't always the fastest kid. And speaking of Loretta Lynn's earlier, I never had a lot of success at this race, and there was a lot of kids that were much faster than me. But you know, I just worked at it, and even as I developed into my career, I was never the fastest person, but I was consistent. And I think my love for the sport and just my internal drive and internal motivation, I think this is what took me throughout my career and to race this long. And I wasn't always the fastest, but I loved it. And because of this, I think I stayed around and people could see my passion, whether it was for testing or racing and training and these things. And that's why I still race, you know, I'm still hooked and I'm still addicted to racing, you know, and that's brought me into my career now with rally. But because of these things, I think this is what drove me and allowed me to have these opportunities year after year and aligned me with people that had a passion for racing also, and they could see this.
You started, I think, with Pro Circuit Kawasaki and then moved quickly to the Moto World Suzuki, I believe. What
Yeah.
happened with Mitch Payton there? Because at that time that was the team to be on.
I had the opportunity to work with Kawasaki through the Team Green program, and simultaneously while I was racing the amateur stuff, I got to ride with Mitch with Pro Circuit Kawasaki. It was really cool because my teammates at the time were Casey Lytle, who was a great person, who's still with KTM on the R&D side, and also Shea Bentley, the champion from the previous year. Unfortunately, my results weren't super awesome. The first race was probably the best one. I finished 13th, and those two teammates were right in front of me. And I remember Mitch laying into him after the first race, and kind of, you know, I was bright-eyed, and it got real quick. But my results weren't great. I went back to Loretta's and won, and then from there I moved to Motor World Suzuki, which was owned by Paul Lindsay, a guy that I grew up with in Colorado.
Right.
And this place was an awesome environment for me to race without the spotlight, because it wasn't Mitch's team, which was probably the best team at the time.
Yeah.
And it allowed me to hone my craft just because I got a lot of gate drops. I would ride the opposite coast. I could ride the 250 two-stroke at the time also. And this was a great time for me because I put in a lot of work. I observed the other people, what they were doing. People like David Pingree, how he structured his training at the track and off the track. And there were certain people like this that I just watched and learned. And gradually I got faster and faster and started to get some results.
The thing I remember whenever I hear the name Andrew Short, what I firstly remember is that win at Vegas in '03, your first probably really big win that seemed to vault you to my conscious. You had been consistent that year. I think you definitely taken the leap forward, but that win, you were so happy after it. Can you relive that moment for us and just how much it meant to you?
Yeah, this race in Vegas was always good to me, the East-West shootout. And I had a few podiums that year. And going into this race, I was more focused on outdoors. And Stewart had a big crash over the finish line. He had a massive endo. And everyone just kind of kept crashing, and it put me in the perfect position to win. And I didn't expect it. And this is why I was so happy. And this is why I said that team, Motor World Suzuki, was perfect. Like, no one expected me to win. And when you're in a situation like this and you win, and it was just unbelievable. Everyone's so stoked and happy, and it was a dream come true. And it's like once you start to win, then the pressure comes with it and the expectations, and it changes everything. But on a team like Motor World, we didn't have factory bikes or anything crazy and special, and we were just doing it the best we could with the resources we had, and it was cool. It was something I'll never forget, you know.
Yeah, it's something that always sticks in my head. That next season you stayed with Motor World. You must have got injured because I seen you were riding 250 races and you were going well in that as well. What happened that season? Obviously, you moved to Honda the next year.
Yeah, this is when the 254 stroke came in, and with Motor World Suzuki, it was the Kawasaki Suzuki combo. And this bike was horrible, and we didn't have the resources to get it dialed. And so I was on a 125 two-stroke. I wasn't very competitive, but the 250 two-stroke I could ride on the opposite coast. And this bike was more or less stock with pipe and silencer and some suspension. And I was really competitive. I was riding with the top guys and getting good results. And this is what allowed the opportunity for me to move to factory Honda. And that was, as a kid coming from Motor World Suzuki, where you get 1 or 2 practice bikes a year, to go into factory Honda, it was a whole different world and a game changer for me. With this came a lot of expectations, but something that every kid dreams of, you know?
Yeah, right back to Ricky Johnson, David Bailey, McGrath, and then laterally just before you went there, Carmichael had been there winning. You mentioned the pressure there. When you got signed, did you feel that pressure from within the team, or was it from your own expectations of being a factory Honda rider?
Nah, yeah, it comes from yourself, just because of so many people before you. You know, you go to the room where they have meetings, and there's just number one plates on the wall around you with the names you mentioned and others. Um, it was a whole different world. And at the time, Carmichael was just leaving. Honda wanted to invest in some young talent and develop these people, because they were getting kind of the stigma that they were just buying championships.
Okay.
So Millsaps came, I did. It was kind of like restructuring, but they invested a lot in this 250F that I was on. Some of the road race guys moved over to this program, and the bike was really cool. It was really fun for me. And the first couple of years, it was like cheating almost with the motor. It was so fast, and the Cowies were competitive also with Mitch, but the Honda was really good, and it was really fun, and I had some good success.
You were pretty close to titles in the supercross seasons there on the 250F. And again, outdoors, you were very competitive as well. Your game really went to the next level. But are you still frustrated when you look back that you couldn't quite get one of those supercross titles tied down because you were so close?
Yeah, I basically in 2006, I feel like it was mine. I was definitely faster than Langston, but Langston was a much better competitor than me. He was more mentally tough. He knew how to perform when it mattered, and these were skills that I hadn't learned yet. And it was really difficult for me looking back, and it still is, obviously, because I had a good opportunity. Um, but other than that, I don't really know what to say. That was one of my biggest regrets, is after losing the championship, I basically just left. I never went over and congratulated Langston or Mitch. I felt like I kind of let my team down after this race in Seattle, and where I lost the championship. The following week, or a couple weeks after, was the shootout again in Vegas, which I was able to get some redemption and win this again. So that place was always good for me. And so Seattle, I had really bad memories by losing this championship, but a lot of great races before that, and good times on the 250F at Honda. And later on, Seattle, I had one of my best races on a 450 there. You know, in 2012, I ended up winning the 450 race there. And that was the only supercross I won. I had a ton of podiums, but I was never able to win. And so that place was bittersweet for me.
Those 450 years on your Honda was probably maybe the prime of your career. You were always finishing in top three in the championships. It seemed like the late sort of 08, 09, 2010. As you say, you got that one win, but you were always knocking on the door, indoors and out. You were competitive. Were those years fun, or was the pressure of trying to win take away a wee bit of that fun? From the outside, you would think that's very enjoyable, but internally, is there a pressure that weighs on you?
Yeah, because it's Honda, so the pressure does wear on you, and you feel like you should win. I was racing against Stewart a lot of the time, who won a lot. At the end was Carmichael of his career in 2007, I guess. So, yeah, I felt the pressure, and I was really good. I wasn't maybe necessarily the fastest, but I was really consistent in both series. So from the outdoor series in 2007, pretty much to 2010, if I stayed healthy, I maybe missed 1 or 2 seasons, indoors or outdoors, but if I'd stayed healthy, I was top 3 in the points. And so this was the good part. The bad part was I wasn't able to like sprint or have a lot of intensity. So this was something I struggled with, but I did well, and it was kind of the prime of my career. A lot of fun. I learned a lot testing at this time, a lot with development with the bikes, and so this was another strength of mine that definitely helped me how to adapt to different conditions. But also it was a strange time in my life. I felt like at this period I was becoming more mature, but things were definitely changing from the family side and just me as a person. I changed a lot and had to become more mature and deal with things, whether it was business or just growing up. So besides just racing, this was a pivotal point in my life, and some great times and some very challenging and tough and difficult times as well.
Regarding Honda and testing, I would imagine that they can do most things you want, or they maybe come with so many options. Can it get, especially when you first go there, can it be confusing with the amount of options and knowing which one to go with? And you might feel better in this one, but the race doesn't show that in the results. Can you get lost in that a wee bit, especially in the early stages?
Yeah, there's many options. I think the thing I learned the most was the political side. There's certain people that are pushing a different direction, and at the time I didn't understand this, and they were trying to do what in their mind was the best thing. And so you kind of have to learn how to communicate and understand from the big picture why certain people are pushing certain directions, whether it's motor or chassis, and they're trying to justify their job and or just different things like this. And before, I never really understood this or even thought of this. So yeah, there's many different things and options you can choose from, but also just learning how to communicate, understanding how the corporate world worked, how racing at a high level worked, and just the different options you can go or you have in front of you and which direction you choose, and how to adapt week in, week out for the different conditions, series, whether it's supercross or motocross, and understanding the difference of these. So I learned a lot, and how to talk differently to maybe the Japanese for future projects, the direction to steer from this. And so this was cool. And also in 2007 and 8, when I came aboard at Honda, the bike was really refined. It was at the end of its cycle. It was the last of the Honda Works bikes in the US. And in 2009, the bike changed a lot. And this bike was primarily built out of parts from Japan. It didn't come as a complete bike. And so this was also different. And it was the first fuel injected bike as well from Honda. So it was cool just to learn how everything came together and how different it was.
And were you focusing then on testing and developing that bike? Was that maybe taken away from your ability to just focus on your race results and speed? Was there a balance there that you had to compromise mentally?
Nah, I don't think this was ever a factor. I think I was really lucky to benefit. McGrath was really big part of the program at the time as well. He did a lot of the development and would help steer us and guide us for direction. And so I feel like this wasn't a hindrance or anything that affected me. And but it was more looking back, it was just good memories, being at the track with the technicians and the other riders. And it's like sitting on the back of the tailgate at the track now. You're just kind of BSing and having fun and enjoying riding. And I have a lot of fond memories of this. And we got to ride at really cool places when we were testing, and you have a track all to yourself and you're with cool people and riding stuff that's getting ready to come out. So when you always see something that you've never seen before, this makes it more fun as well.
And Jeremy helping you, were you able to learn a lot from him with obviously the skills and experience he had? And he seemed always relaxed, even though he had a lot of pressure from winning. So were you able to take a lot from him during those years?
Yeah. Maybe I didn't tap into it too much on the mental side, where I wish I maybe would have. He was really good at this. I think was more natural for him. But I think the biggest thing I got from him is even when it was rainy, when we couldn't ride the supercross track, we would go to Ocotillo and make a track and just have fun and just go ride and be like a kid almost. This is what I remember most, and I thought was the coolest part, and I think these skills helped me more than anything. And, before Daytona, most people would be riding a sand track, and we were out at Ocotillo just making a track that was natural and having fun and making the most of it, or going to Castillo Ranch and doing the photo shoot and seeing him put the bike in places and moving it the way that nobody else could. These are things that I remember, not so much, hey, what do you think about the bike here? Can I go a little faster in the corner here? It was more like, hey, let's go check this out. And, you think we can transfer from this section to that section? Or, these are the things I had most fun. And just riding with him in these ways, than saying, hey, can I go, on the right side of the whoops, cross over to the left? Or you talked about this a little bit with him, but this wasn't Jeremy. He didn't analyze things so much. Right. It was more natural for him.
Mm-hmm. And the two other big moments in your career were the Motocross of Nations, both came in Honda, that win in 2010. As obviously Americans expect you to win that race, but even as an outsider, you expect America, because of the size of the country and the amount of good riders, to always at least contend for the win. So to do that on any country, whenever you represent America, but to go to your home country and do that, I imagine the pressure is really high. What is it like to A, race that, but B, carry that weight of expectation that you almost have to deliver?
Yeah. And at the time, it seemed like the U.S. was always winning. And this track where I was at in Colorado was the same place I grew up as a kid. Okay. So it was really special to me. I wanted to be a part of this race. I took a lot of pride in it, and it meant a lot to me. And the first moto didn't go well. I collided with Ben Townley, and it wasn't looking good for us. And I remember Roger just like looking at me like, you have to get this done. And you can't think or do it. It's just like, it's real, and I got really great starts at this race. And at this time in 2010, I pretty much got every start, every hole shot in the nationals. It was automatic for me. And it was the same at this race. Yeah. I had the start wired, and it made a difference. It's like, I got a start, I got towed out, and the race just rubber bands, and if you can put yourself in a good position, it makes a big difference. And it allowed me to have a good second moto. I got the whole shot. I was leading for a while. Dungy got around me, and I pretty much stayed there. So it was really cool. And after the race, when you're standing on the podium, you see all the people and everyone's saying USA or yelling USA. And it's something that you have to experience to understand the feelings and understand what it's like. And I can't imagine what it would be like if you didn't win. The disappointment and the opposite effect would be really hard to deal with, I think. So this is one thing I'm really thankful it went well, and I put a lot of work into that race. So with racing, you never know what's going to happen, but it was a really cool moment.
And then the next one was your one Supercross victory. Can you talk us through that day, that race, and how you felt leaving that stadium that night?
Yeah, this was cool because, like I said earlier, I had a really bad race there, and this stadium was open, and It wasn't a dome, and it always rained there. And it was not I'm not good when it's rainy and ruddy and the conditions are like this. I didn't grow up in it. It's just not my specialty. But again, I got a good start. Kenny was behind me. He was on the 350, the bike I rode the year before, and I really disliked. And I just stayed there, and like everything kind of went my way. Villapoto blew out his knee on lap 2, I think, and this was his home race, and so I didn't really expect to win, and this is what makes it even more sweet. Kind of like my first win on the 125, when you don't expect it at a place you don't normally do well. It was really cool, and I lost my voice that night because I was screaming so much and things like this, and it was a really, really cool feeling, a moment, and definitely a highlight in my career.
You mentioned there the 350. I remember you on that bike. There was a lot of talk that would be really good for Supercross, and I actually thought it would be good as well, and it might go into it with all the other manufacturers, but you never seemed to get stars. It was obviously early in its development as well. How was that year frustrating for you? Did you come in with higher hopes than the reality showed in the results, and how was the bike to ride for you?
Yeah, I was really optimistic about this bike until I rode it. And once I rode it, I knew it was going to be a struggle. I just didn't have the torque, and you don't have so much room to accelerate in Supercross. A great bike, super fun to ride. It's one of the most fun bikes I've ever ridden. And I think if you just can have one bike for riding in the woods and motocross, and it's kind of a do-it-all bike. And at that time, a stock bike produces so much more horsepower now than even the factory one did then. And so yeah, it was a struggle all year, and I think it was after round 5 or 6, pretty much development stopped on the 350, and they started with the 450 for the following year. And this was the first year Roger and Ian were there, and I came, and Frankie and Carlos. So it was more of a development year, and so I kind of knew that. And what I enjoyed most about that year was the people on that team and seeing everything transpire and grow. And it was a cool time to be a part of this group, and to see how far it's came is crazy. But that bike I didn't gel with for Supercross. It was really difficult for me coming off of 2010 with a bike that was really good, and maybe the best. And so this was, as a competitor, in your head, it's hard to understand this and compete like this.
Regarding the team dynamics, you mentioned the KTM there. Obviously, that was at the beginning of their what has become a very dominant team with Roger and Ian. How was it working with them compared to the people at Honda? Is there a vast difference to how that they operate? They have more direct communication, obviously, with Austria and the Grand Prix side, maybe with working.
I think this was the best time to be involved with KTM because everyone was so motivated. The budget, it was like there's no budget. If they needed something, they would just buy it, and it wasn't corporate yet, and it was super cool. And they had that Euro passion where they would, like, if they needed something done, they would just do it, And this was so cool to be a part of a time like this where Honda was very corporate. You needed to ask 10 people before you got a decision. And now it seems like it's almost changed. I think KTM's super corporate now in the US because it's so big and there's so much money and there's so many people, and just different times. And you understand why the companies are the way they are. But to be a part of this program at that time was something special. And it's when Marvin came over, Kenny was there. He was bouncing back between the GPs and the US. And so this was really fun to see a 16-year-old Kenny that's out of control. And it just had good people. So it was something special to be a part of it at that time. And I think Pitt and Robert Jonas and these people were so motivated that, and obviously Roger and Ian, that those people took the program to another level and created, what's arguably one of the strongest or best teams today.
You mentioned your relationship with Kenny there. From memory, you were pretty close. I think he stayed with you at times as well when he first went to America. He was quite, you said, out of control there. Your personalities are maybe slightly different in different directions, but you seem to get on really well. How was that time for you to be around him and his enthusiasm? And he's obviously very naturally talented on a bike as well. Did it keep things fun for you, or was it a bit of a headache keeping an eye on him?
Yeah, no, it was fun for me because I was old and very structured, organized, and everything Kenny wasn't, you know. I was married, had kids. He was 16, looking for a girlfriend everywhere. And, you know, it's just madness. But I loved to ride with him because he had so much enthusiasm, and it was just fun. And it was cool because everything was new for him also in the US. So he was always stoked to go ride at a new place, or, you know, trying to find stuff to do. And for me, it was, you know, it's like I was starting to not lose motivation, but it wasn't new for me anymore. So it was cool to be around somebody like this. I really enjoyed his father at the time, Papa, who was, he was a little bit crazy, I think, but in a good way. And he really pushed him. And I liked how he analyzed racing. He was real big on shifting and being smooth and carrying momentum. And I think he was, I don't know. I think he was pretty smart on how he went about racing. So I admired this. Alessi's were part of the program too at the time, and Tony was crazy. But I learned a lot from these people, and especially Kenny, because he was the new age, you know, and he brought a different technique coming from Europe, and I enjoyed watching this, being around it, and it was cool.
The latter end of your career, it wasn't maybe results wise quite as good as the Honda, but you were still competitive, very much in the top 10. I think you ended your last season, you were ninth overall in outdoors maybe. When did you know you wanted to stop racing motocross? Did it become the traveling more than the racing, or were you still enjoying the racing, or was everything just because you'd done it for so long come to a natural conclusion?
Yeah, I've been racing the same races for, you know, 16 years, and I was doing a lot of development for KTM with air shock, air forks, and I loved racing, but it wasn't like exciting as it was at the beginning, just because it was the same thing week in, week out. And I still loved you know, I loved riding a dirt bike, but I was ready to go explore. I loved trail riding. I loved going to the mountains. I wanted to go to Baja and, you
Right.
know, check out places I've never been before. And
Mm-hmm.
when you go to Redbud for the 15th time, you know exactly where to go eat, you know, the airport. It's just like, I don't know. I felt like it was time. And
Mm-hmm.
the hard part is like, what do you do next? And for me, I'd been surrounded around people that wanted to be at the highest level. They're always waking up, sleeping, breathing on how to be better. And to
Mm-hmm.
just get a normal job or be around people that are quote unquote normal is really difficult and hard for me. Um, that might sound bad, but this is what I love most about sports and this mindset. So I kind of struggled with this, um, but I hit my head a lot. 2015, I was really competitive in supercross, and I broke my kneecap at the end of the series, and this was my last good like run. And then after this, when I was coming back, I hit my head and I had a couple concussions that were really bad, and this scared me.
Mm-hmm.
So when this happened, I knew I kind of had to chill out, and I gave myself permission that like this is enough, you know. So I did that last outdoor series knowing that this was the end, and I just kind of rode it and enjoyed it. I did my best, but I don't think I was willing to take the chances and hang it out to be ultra competitive. But during this time, I really loved to go explore, and this is kind of which led to the next chapter.
That was going to be my question, because to go from especially supercross, predominantly in America, that's the main thing, to go and do rally, what you're doing now, it's worlds apart. So how did those steps then come forward to end up to do what you're doing now and racing Dakar?
Yeah, I didn't even know what Dakar was. Honestly, I was really uneducated with this. Like Supercross and motocross was my world. I loved it. And I went to a rider rally for KTM in 2013. They're releasing the 1190 adventure bike, which I didn't even know anything about. But it was trail riding in the mountains, so sign me up. I was into it. And Kurt Caselli was there, and he had his rally bike, and he was showing it to me. I'm like, oh, this is sweet, you know? But I'm still racing motocross and whatnot. When I got done racing, I was helping the Honda team with development. Kenny was there, but I was also doing media stuff. And one of the weekends I was testing, we took a break for the weekend, and the Japanese were going up to the desert to go do rally testing for durability. So they asked me if I'd come up, and I went up there, rode the bike, and I'm like, oh, this is sweet. It's kind of like trail riding, but it's faster. And I don't know, it seemed cool. You had to be smart. It wasn't just about pinning it. You had to navigate, and it seemed like there was some strategy. It's kind of like Tour de France. It seemed really cool and new and exciting, you know, and it was still racing with people that wanted to be the best. So one thing led to another. I got addicted to this, and it's led to a whole new chapter.
And what was the most difficult part of learning this whole thing? Obviously, you had high level bike skills. Was riding the bike much different, or was it more the navigation? And because it looks like he could, it's just like, where do you go? A lot of times, whenever I see clips of the car, it's just wide open, and you guys are still running a hot pace. But how are you able to? Was the navigation a big thing you had to learn?
Yeah, navigation is tough, but it's everything. There's so much strategy, and I feel like the Euros are really clever on how they approach racing. And honestly, I really underestimated how good the riders were. They're really fast, and but they're smart, and they have it wired. So I thought I would come in, and in a few months I would be competitive, and it was completely not true. It took me a long time, and this was really tough for me. But like motocross, I just kept digging and working, and I figured it out a lot more, and I've gotten a lot better. And I've never done good at Dakar. I've done really good in the World Championship stuff before. I've been able to win a race in Morocco, which is the lead up to Dakar, and I've gotten second in Silkway and a few other races. But Dakar is like the holy grail of rally, and I've always had some troubles there. So this is the last thing on my list. I would like to do good, and we'll see. So, but it's something that you have to work at. The navigation is hard, but there's so much more to it, and this is what makes this race so special. And the people in the paddock and all these things, it's like motocross and supercross, but on steroids. And it's something that it's hard to explain to people in America, but I think if they understood it, it would take off. It's a really cool race and a really cool sport.
How long do you still see yourself doing this? You seem still completely enthusiastic for it.
Yeah, no, I'm hooked on this thing. I don't know how much longer I can do it for. I turned 39 in November, and so we'll see. I'm signed on for one more Dakar in January, and after this, see what happens. But yeah, I love it, but doors open, doors close. You never know, and I'm really thankful for this opportunity with Yamaha. Last year was strange to be a rally for everyone, you know, with COVID, but race internationally was really difficult, and hopping on a new team and not having a lot of time was hard for us, but hard for everyone. But really thankful to be a part of this group with Yamaha and Monster. Really cool people. They have a lot of history and success from years in the past, and hopefully we can make it happen and do well this year.
With your schedule, how does that work with your family? Obviously, you're traveling outside of America a lot. Are you still able to get a good balance with that?
Yeah, no, when I'm home, you know,
Okay.
and I try to go to the desert and practice, but I feel like tomorrow morning I'm leaving for Colorado to go race an enduro, but
Okay, cool.
my son's going to race it on his YZ85, and my wife, who raced it last year also, she's going to follow him this year, you know, make sure he can survive, because it's 70 miles.
Right.
And on a YZ85, it's going to be difficult, not only on fuel, but the terrain. It's at 8,000 feet to 10,000 feet is the range. I don't know what that is in meters, but it's high.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why I say we get to experience stuff, ride motorcycles, and do events, and have these life experiences I wouldn't normally get to have. So I'm thankful for this. And so it's cool. Also, I live on a farm, and my kids are my son. He used to never like dirt bikes until COVID.
Right.
And now since COVID, he loves dirt bikes, and it was something we could do here on the farm. And so now he's hooked also. So I get to spend a lot of time with him, and my wife obviously came from racing as well. So she has her own life and she's busy, but we get to do a lot of cool events, and I'm thankful for this.
I was watching Loretta Lynn's last night, and Jeff Emig won a moto on his 150. Mike Brown nearly won
Yeah,
the over 25 race. Was
yeah.
really cool to watch. Have you any plans of doing that in the future and going back to there?
No, the only way I would go back is if my son went back, and he rides more off road than motocross and just started, and it would be really difficult for him to qualify for this race. But if he did this, I would like to go, and
Hmm.
maybe even my wife. I looked up my wife's results and showed them to my son yesterday when we were watching. I'm like, see, your mom can go fast too. Um, but yeah, it's cool that they have this race in the U.S. I heard 26,000 people tried to qualify,
Right, it's
and
crazy.
yeah, it's massive, and it's cool to see so many kids have an outlet like this, and the sport's growing, and
Mhm.
it's good for the industry. But I think it's great for the families to have these times together, to travel and compete and have these emotions and feelings. And I think these things shape them for their lives, and um, will hopefully be a positive impact, and they'll develop this passion for the sport. And I think this is cool that they can experience it. It's good for the industry and the business and all this, but hopefully more importantly, it's just good for the people that they have a love and a passion for riding, and something they can look back on and be happy about. Because I definitely have good memories with my family and friends and all these things from these races, and I'm very happy and thankful I got to do races like this.
Just finally, Andrew, whenever you look back at your career, I'm sure you have the odd regret here and there, but are you overall happy with what you achieved and the experiences you've had riding motorbikes?
Yeah, sure. Not very many people get to race for as long as I have. Sure, there's been more that have been more successful, like a James Stewart or Ricky Carmichael. But at the same time, I've met a lot of great people. I've got to ride a lot of great bikes. I lived a career that I never thought would be possible. When I was 17 or 18, I was just hoping to make it pro and not go to college like my parents told me. They're like, you have a year or two, and then after this, you're going to school, you know? So I really wanted to make it happen. And because I love bikes, and to be almost 39 years old, still trying to be my best and get to ride and, go to Colorado tomorrow and race an enduro all over the place. I just got back from France riding a rally bike. It's like that's not normal, and it still brings a smile to my face. And I get to work with great people. Like, this isn't normal, and I know it's not going to last forever. So I'm definitely really appreciative. And so yeah, I definitely. You always wish you could have more regrets, like you said, but at the same time, I have to realize that this isn't something that most people get to experience, and I feel very blessed.
Thank you, Andrew. That's brilliant. I hope everyone really enjoyed that. It's been very insightful, and I think your passion really shines through for motorbikes that you still have. So thanks very much for your time. Thank you.